Hello everyone, welcome to 3ddesignacademy.com. In this lesson, we will continue with part 7 of the Lamborghini Aventador project. So continuing on from the previous lesson, I'm going to be working on the body side a little bit. So what I'm going to do is, I think I'm going to fix this a little bit. So right now it's got a lot of spans. So let me just try to reduce the number of spans on this surface. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do, well, first of all, what you want to do is try rebuild. That did reduce the spans by 7, but it's still a lot. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn rebuild off. I'm going to turn explicit control, and I'm going to reduce the gen degree to 2 because that's only that's a maximum number of degree required since it is created by degree 2 curve. And I'm just going to increase the rail degree to 5, and looks like we were able to achieve position on this one. Okay, so after that, I'm just going to trim this piece over here. And let's see if, actually, let's just take a look at the photo first. Looks like it's ending somewhere here. So let's do that too. So what I'm going to do is, again, I'm just going to get a rail. It's just going to be 1 against the trimmed edge over here. And I'm just going to click on this one over here. Okay, so it looks like this also has a lot of spans. So I'm going to just do a rebuild. And actually, because we only need it up to this point over here. So I'm just going to see if I can just do a curve segment and see if they reduce the spans enough. Okay, so it's still degree 2 spans. So I'm just going to, again, turn that off, and I'm just going to turn explicit control on. Actually, if that's the case, I'm pretty sure it's okay to just extend it that way. I'm just going to turn curve segments off, and I'm going to see if, okay, so the angle seems, well, I think it's okay. So I'm just going to grab a curve. I'm just going to change this to degree 2 like this. I'm going to snap a curve over here. I'm going to snap a curve, create a curve right here like this, trying to match the angle as much as possible. I think there should be a slight crown, I believe. Just a minor one. I think that looks good, and I'm just going to project like this, and I'm going to trim. Okay, so I think that looks pretty good. Of course, we might have to adjust it later, but I think for now it's okay. Okay, so the next step, I think I need to create this piece over here. So let's do that. So what I'm gonna do is, well, actually, this probably needs to divide. Probably needs to be divided also. This does complicate things a little bit, but I think this is probably a good division point between this surface and that one. So let's go ahead and try to create a surface there. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. So right now we have a curve here that's supposed to mimic the side view, but I don't think I actually need to, well, actually, you know what? Let me just leave that as a projection curve. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, let's see. I am actually going to extend this curve just a little bit, like this. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to project this one like that, and I'm going to trim. I think that looks good. And for the next piece, this piece right here, let's take a look at this angle. So right now it's curved in, it's tucked in quite a bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, well, actually, you know what? I'm just going to use this section over here. So right now oh, actually there's no section over here. So that's okay. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a curve like this. It can be a little bit lower, that doesn't really matter. And because right now there's a little bit of crown on this surface, I'm going to give it a little bit of crown too. And using the stretch tool, I'm just going to tuck it in. Why isn't it working? Okay, so I'm just going to tuck it in like this. Oops, and I'm just going to create a rail on this piece over here. Okay, so right now it's looking okay, but let me just trim these pieces over here so they're not in the way. So I'm just going to trim that one. Looks like your curving surface is a little bit short. So here's what I'm going to do instead. I'm going to grab both of these, and there is a curve right here that's behind them. Okay, so I'm just going to use this one in order to project, and I'm going to trim this piece over here. And when I trim, I'm just going to do extend on, selected on. I want to keep the history on this, so I'm just going to delete this one, trim it this way, and I'm going to trim this one also, so that when I'm playing with these surfaces over here, it's not interfering. Okay, so I think this one looks okay, but I do think it needs a little bit more crown, so I'm just going to pull the CV out like this. Well, this angle, you might have to make sure that it's working, because right now, okay, so I'm actually going to extend this one out just a little bit more so that we can have history and adjust it as needed. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I just extend this curve over here, and I'm actually going to put this curve, the generation curve, over here, and I'm going to redo the monorail like this. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to project this curve over here, and we do have a curve over here, so I'm going to see if I can just create a curve to chop this all off. So I think that's mimicking the ground plane well enough. Let me just do this, and it does look like there's a bit of an angle on the side view, but it could also be because of the drawing. Let me see if I can grab a side view that may show this a little bit better. I'm going to see if there's one that we can take a look at. Yeah, I believe it is all straight, so I'm just going to leave it like this. Okay, so let me just grab this one. I'm going to project, and I'm just going to trim for now, like this, both surfaces. Okay, so now we have history on the this surface over here, so we can adjust the angle as needed. Now, looking at the front 3/4 view, it looks like I might have tucked in a little bit too much. So I'm just going to pull it back out like this. I'm just going to compare to maybe something like that. And yeah, I think I can bring it out just a little bit more. And it does look like that this angle and this angle is very similar, so I think that should be a good reference. And I think that might be it. Now, I still do want to keep a break because there does seem to be a break over here. So I just want to be mindful of that and make sure that we are getting it as close as close to the picture as possible. So I would say that's good enough. I might have, just a little bit more, and I think that's pretty good. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I probably need to create a surface over here. So let me just go to the rear like this, and I'm going to create a surface using this curve over here, and it's just going to be a rail. Actually, it does need to tuck in, but I am not sure if this should be created using a different curve. So let me just take a look at a different image. Now, it does look like it is about the same angle, but that will not allow us to create a crease over here like this. So I think I probably want to grab a new curve. So since it is the side view needs to be the same, so I'm just going to create a new curve like this. I just copy and paste it, and I'm going to extend this one. You want to create the one that was created later, the one that was copy and pasted. I'm just going to extend it back so that we can create a curve here. And I'm going to extend this side because the surface area of this is quite large. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use the extend tool to just do that. Tuck in a little bit, and I'm just going to use a rail like this. Okay, so I think that looks good. However, we do need to add some more surface details, and I do think it's a little bit short. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to extend it just a little bit more, and I'm going to project and trim using this curve over here. Okay, so as you can see over here, let me just turn that off. It created a nice break between this surface over here and this surface over here. So I think that looks pretty good. I do believe that this is also the theoretical. You might not be able to see it that clearly, but I think this there should be a break between this surface and this surface, and the theoretical seems to be running diagonally. So I think I should be okay keeping this as is, and I'm just going to create a rail like this. Now it does need to tuck in, so actually let me just take a look. Looks like it needs to tuck in over here. I don't know if it's twisting in, so I don't know if this is actually touching or if there's supposed to be a different break over here. So let me see if I can find an image that has that detail. Now this might show. Okay, so right now it's kind of cropped, so I can't really take a look at this area as well. But I do think that this is touching, so I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tuck this in, which means that this surface over here needs to be rotated quite a bit. Although that is going to help us achieve a sort of a curvature kind of condition, or at least something that is close, so that this surface and this surface, it looks very similar in angle. Okay. So also what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give this a little bit crown because I think it looks almost negative over here. Now that probably is due to the angle of this one, like that. Actually, in order to avoid, well, actually, you know what? Yeah, let's just keep it that way. Okay, so I think that looks good. However, I do need to tuck this in. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to rotate this a little bit like this so that we can tuck it in. And looks like there's a little bit of angle difference, but I think that should be okay. And we are getting a nice section over here. However, I think what I'm going because we do need history over here, I think I'm going to approach this a little bit differently. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to duplicate this curve over here, and I'm just going to extend it a little bit so that we can retain history and also make sure that it's the same edge. So I'm just going to do a rail again, rebuild like this. So now it's extended all the way. So that provides us a better control. And also what I'm going to do is I'm just going to project this one over here. And let me just take a look at this. Okay, so it looks like there's a little bit of thickness. So I should be aware of that. And I'm just going to trim this piece over here like this. And I'm going to copy and paste this one, and I'm just going to lift it up just a little bit so that we can take care of this one over here. So there needs to be a little bit of thickness. So what you want to do is you want to just raise it up just a little bit, and I'm just going to extend it back, and I'm going to extend this one, and I'm going to project. Oh, actually, before I project, I should actually merging this one. Well, I think here's what I'm going to do. As much as I would like to make this one piece, there's a section break here anyways, so I'm going to actually take advantage of that, and I'm going to create a new curve over here. So in order to do that, I am going to do a fit curve over here like this. I'm going to just make it degree 2, it should be enough. And I'm just going to let's see, I'm just going to go back to the side view, and I'm going to snap it over here, and I'm going to use the stretch tool over here like this, and I'm going to snap it here like that. And now we can create a section over here. Now looks like this continues on for a little bit. Let's see. Oh, it's not a lot, but I think it's at least touching over here. So what I'm going to do is, yeah, I think that should be okay. Well, we'll see. Okay, before I continue though, let me just trim this off first. So looks like this should be the section break and this should be the angle that we're trying to keep. So what I'm going to do is, well, it looks like it's a little bit off. Well, I prefer to keep everything the same. So I think I'm going to move this back just a little bit towards the back of the car, and I'm going to change the angle a little bit so that it's a little bit more parallel. And what that does is it allows us to get this a little bit closer. And in order to do that, in order to match this a little bit better, what I can do, oh, actually this curve I cannot change. Okay, you know what? I'm just going to, I know it's a little bit off, but I think it should be okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to project this curve over here. And I'm just going to snap this curve over here like this from the side view. I would say it's close enough. And maybe I'll just use a stretch tool to angle a little bit more, make sure that it's parallel. Okay, so I'm just going to project over here and I'm going to trim the surface over here. And now let's go ahead and do a rail over here like this. And let's just take a look at how it intersects over here. Okay, so I do think that the angle may need to change a little bit. I think it needs to. Okay, and I also think that maybe the thickness is a little bit too much, which means we can actually make this a little bit thinner. And the surface over here, let's see, I'm just going to grab this one and I'm going to just snap it over here like that. Although I think it could be a little bit thinner. And let me just move this curve back down over here like this. And now I'm going to, well, I know it looks like it's ending somewhere here. I don't know if this is a reflection or the angle needs to, I don't think I'm going to make two breaks. So, okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to keep it here and I'm just going to use a bi-rail. Actually, if that's okay, so we can always trim this also. So let's do that instead. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to snap a curve right here. And I'm going to angle this one a little bit more so that it goes back a little bit. And I'm just going to project this surface over here. And I'm going to trim this one. And that's going to be the beginning of a new surface. It's going to act as a gen. And I'm going to just snap. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. And let's go ahead and trim this piece over here. Like this. And I'm going to trim. And I'm also going to use the stretch tool to snap this curve. I don't know why it's not using the stretch, but that's fine. I'm just going to snap it over here like this. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use a bi-rail in order to snap it over here. In order to do that, I think what I'm going to do is, yeah, I'll just make sure the theoretical is the same. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to use a bi-rail. And it's going to be 1 over here, it's going to be 2 over here, and it's going to be 3 over here on this edge. Now I know it's longer than longer than necessary. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go back to creative history. Explicit control I don't think needs to be on. And I'm just going to use the curve segment over here and I'm going to snap it right here like this so that we got a nice even thickness running along the lower. Okay, so I think that looks pretty good, and I think I'm going to create a curve over here for the inside surface here. I'm just going to use a stretch tool like this and I'm just going to bring it up. Now there should, well, actually, I'm not sure. I don't know if there's supposed to be a crown or not, but it's a good practice to do so because no surface in Alias or automotive surfacing should be dead flat. So I'm just going to give it a slight crown, even if it's just a tiny little bit. And I'm just going to do a rail. Again, it's just going to be 1 and 1. And this one, I'm going to turn rotation off like this. Okay, so I'm just going to do this over here. I think the intersection looks pretty good. Although I think it needs to be either be deeper or it needs to move up. So let's go, actually I think from this angle I think it needs to be a little bit deeper. So let's do that. But before I do, I just want to make sure that I know there's a little bit of crease here, but I don't want to make it too severe. So let's go ahead and we can, I know it looks very flat over here, so I think I probably need to do a blend between the two. Now, I don't know how this corner is going to turn out though, because right now the transition here seems pretty sharp, whereas the surface themselves seem to be very continuing nicely. So I probably have to put a big fillet here, but we'll see how that goes. Now, it is missing surface over here, and we do need to take a look at that and how it intersects. So I'm just going to extend this surface with merge off, and I'm just going to do a line. It's going to be G2. And when you extend the surface, you want to make sure that this surface is actually degree 2, so that whatever this surface does, everything is going to be translated into this one. You don't want some loose CVs hanging out over here, so you want to make sure that it's degree 2. If it's not, you want to change it. And now it's got a surface as a continuation of that. I think that looks pretty good. However, I do think that this one needs to be rotated inboard a little bit more. So I'm just going to do, I think, right now it's -18. It doesn't look too bad. However, I do think that it should be a little bit deeper. Well, actually, I'm not quite sure. Well, I think it actually looks pretty good. Okay, so maybe I'll just leave it like that. And we got a nice section over here. Now, there does need to be a little bit of thickness over here, but I think I'm going to leave that detail for a little bit later. I know there's a break here, but that we can address later as well. Now, if you do want to make this a little bit smoother, what you can do is you can just expand this out. However, it does need to be straight over here, so maybe I'll just leave that as is. Yeah, I think I'm just going to use try to use the highlight as much as possible. Not a highlight, a fillet, a generous fillet, to make this as smooth as possible. Actually, let me just take a look, do a little bit of test. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a G2, and I'm going to do a quarter length of 50 to start. And I'm just going to make sure that this is edge aligned, and I'm just going to extend. Actually, you know what? Let me just do it. I think that's too small, so I'm just going to make it twice the size, 100. Now, with the reflection, it does look a little bit, wow. So here's the thing. I don't think I'll be able to find an image where it shows this detail, because as you can see over here, it's usually dark, so I don't know how the highlight is supposed to travel with this one. Maybe this one shows a little bit better. No, not really. Okay, so if this is the case, I think I'll just leave it like this. And however, the edge, this does end up with a point, which means I cannot do an edge align. So if I were to do an edge align, it's going to give me a round point, which is not what we want. So what we can do is, well, there are several things that we can do, but I think the the easiest method would be to just leave it like this. And now this, I should probably leave it for later, but let's just cover it up. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to extend this carbon surface over here like this. Now this is a little bit more advanced technique. I'm just going to trim this piece over here, and I'm going to trim, whoa, what happened? Okay, so if that's the case, let me just undo, and I'm just going to make sure that everything is okay. And I'm just going to delete the construction history over here, and I'm going to have to redo this. Okay, so I'm just going to do a surface fillet. That looks good. The CV structure is okay. Actually, I'm just going to make sure that the CV structure is good by doing Bezier. Okay, that usually ensures that you have a very good CV structure, and even though it might look good when you extend it, it does tend to create some problems. So, okay, so after that, I'm just going to extend this curve and surface over here like this, and I'm going to trim this piece over here. And in order to close this off, I'm just going to use a square. It's going to be 1, 2, oh, is it not? Why is it not making a square? That's weird. I personally don't think that there's a gap, as you can see over here. And when I zoom in, I don't see any gap. So I'm guessing that Alias is doing something a little bit funny. Okay, so if that's the case, what you can do is you can just duplicate this edge. I'm going to just extend this back like that. Oops, what's going on? Let's just turn merge off. I'm going to extend this curve back, and you can use the edge of the curve. See, I don't know why Alias does this, but sometimes it does. And in order to overcome this, you can just create a new curve. Usually duplicate curve works, and you can use that to make it the fourth edge. And it's doing it again. Now this one, I don't think there's a gap either. So let's find out what is the problem. So in order to find out which side is not matching, you can always, because the square tool, it has to be going in one direction or the other. So let's say you pick this one first, then you'll see that I was able to pick this, which means that there's no gap between these two. I'm going to assume that because of this worked, this is the problem, but looks like it's not. Oh, well, there we go. We were able to make a square. Okay, so that is good. So now I'm just going to make sure that the continuity is good as well. So I'm just going to make this curvature over here, and I'm going to make a curvature, and I'm just going to see how much the CV moves. It's not a lot. Oh, actually, there was only tangent. So let me just turn that back on. Curvature, you'll see that there's a little bit of CV movement over here. And you'll see that these are stationary because they're not affected by anything. So in this case, what I like to do is I just like to leave a 2 as a free boundary. And I'm going to use just the G2 curvature over here like this. And I'm going to do a vector because right now it's the angle on this is not right. So I'm just going to use a vector. With the view, I think I'm just going to place it in normal. And in order to transition these nicely from the changes here, I'm just going to do a blending on, and I'm going to do extra series of 2 so that these 2 rows of CVs also has a nice transition from here to here. Blend factor, well, it's kind of hard to see because the movement is so subtle. So I think maybe I'll just do maybe half, 0.5. I'm just going to make sure that continuity here is good as well in retained curvature. So that is excellent. Okay, so the highlight, okay, so here is the problem. So this is the problem that, okay, so if this is the case, I might have to find a different approach in order to do this. And it might involve pulling this out, but this definitely needs to be addressed because right now this is not a condition that is desirable. I might, unfortunately, I might have to make some adjustments, but which is okay because that's what Alias and surfacing is all about. So I think this is a pretty good spot to stop. We will pick this up in the next lesson, and I'm going to show you guys how to make this a little bit smoother and this a little bit flatter so that it is it has a much better transition than this one. I think on one of the things that I might want to explore is pull this edge out, which will make this edge the transition a little bit smoother, and as a result I might have to pull this surface out as well. But that should be in the next lesson. Okay, so that is it for part 7. We will continue in the next tutorial, and thank you guys for watching.